They thought it would be easy to break her. One powerful man, one spotlight, one black girl standing alone on a stage built to make her feel small. Millions of eyes watching, waiting for her to fail, to confirm what they already believed about girls who look like her. Her hands were shaking, her throat was tight, and fear pressed against her chest like it wanted to silence her forever. He smiled as he whispered a threat into her microphone, certain the world would laugh with him and not at him. But something inside her snapped. In that moment, she wasn't just a 17-year-old girl from a poor neighborhood anymore. She was every voice that had been ignored, every truth that had been buried, every lie that had been protected by power. And when she opened her mouth, she would expose a secret so dangerous it would tear down a career, unleash a wave of hatred, and force the world to choose between comfort and truth. Stay with this story, because what happens next will shock you. The first thing Naomi Brooks noticed was the silence. Not the good kind, the kind that feels like a held breath, but the heavy, uncomfortable kind that settles in a room when someone powerful decides to make an example out of you. "You," the man said, pointing straight at her. "The girl in the back, the one in the cheap uniform." Every head in the Redwood Civic Auditorium turned. Naomi was 17, black, tall for her age, shoulders still carrying the weight of helping raise two younger brothers while her mother worked double shifts at Grady Memorial Hospital. She had been standing with a choir near the rear risers, trying to disappear the way she learned to do in certain spaces. Spaces where being seen too clearly as a black girl came with consequences. She hadn't planned to be noticed tonight, but Blake Harrington noticed her. Blake Harrington, 4 platinum albums, stadium tours, brand deals that wrapped his face around billboards from Atlanta to Amsterdam. The press called him generous, a savior of underprivileged talent. Tonight was his annual charity gala, streamed live, watched by millions across the US and Europe. Naomi felt her stomach tighten. "Yes, sir," she said, already knowing that politeness wouldn't save her. "Come up here," Blake said, smiling for the cameras. "Let's hear what real talent sounds like." The smile didn't reach his eyes. She took a step back without meaning to. Ms. Lorraine Carter, the choir director who had believed in Naomi since middle school, caught her wrist and whispered, "Stand tall." Naomi walked forward. The spotlight was brutal, too bright, too hot. She could feel it crawling over her skin, the way attention sometimes did when it wasn't meant to lift you. Only measure how far you could fall. Blake leaned down, microphone lowered, voice still loud enough to be heard through hers. "Don't embarrass yourself," he murmured. A ripple of laughter moved through the audience. Nervous laughter. The kind people use when they sense cruelty but don't want to challenge it. Naomi understood then. This wasn't about music. This was about power. 4 hours earlier, Naomi had been in the same building for sound check, standing near the wings with the other choir students. She hadn't meant to listen. She hadn't meant to hear anything at all. But when Blake rehearsed his signature song, the one every fan waited for, something had gone wrong. The famous high note never came. His voice cracked, not subtly, not artistically. It collapsed. The sound engineer had quickly adjusted the track. Suddenly the note rang out perfectly, too perfectly, clean, metallic, detached from the body producing it. Naomi had perfect pitch. Not a gift you brag about when you're a black girl from South Fulton. Just something you learn to keep quiet. She had said nothing, until now. On stage, Blake snapped his fingers at the band. "Higher ground," he said. "Let's give her the bridge." The bridge. The note that made him famous. Naomi's heart pounded. This was the moment he wanted her to fail. To miss the note. To look small. To prove, at least in the eyes of millions, that she didn't belong on stages like this. She stepped closer to the mic. "I don't think," she began. "Oh, you'll be fine," Blake said smoothly, voice booming for the cameras. "Just follow the track." Naomi swallowed. Then she did something no one expected. "Could you turn the backing track off?" she asked. The room froze. Blake blinked. "What?" "I want to sing it live," Naomi said, her voice steady despite the heat in her chest. "The way you did at soundcheck." A murmur rolled through the crowd. Blake laughed, sharp and brittle. "Sweetheart, that track is part of the arrangement." "But you didn't use it earlier," Naomi said. "You sang it alone." The silence grew louder. Then maybe you could sing it first, she continued, so I can hear how you do it without help. Gasps. Phones lifted. Cameras zoomed. Blake's smile slipped for half a second. Long enough. You're asking me to audition? He said. No, Naomi replied. I'm asking you to be honest. There it was. The word people like Blake Harrington didn't expect to hear from someone like Naomi Brooks. He turned to the sound engineer. Kill the track. The engineer hesitated. Now. The music thinned, exposed. Blake began confidently, his voice polished, practiced. The crowd relaxed. Maybe the girl was wrong. Maybe this was just another moment blown out of proportion. Then the melody climbed. His neck tightened. His breath shortened. He reached for the note and missed. The crack echoed through the auditorium like glass breaking. Blake laughed it off. Dry throat, he said quickly. That's why professionals use tracks, to protect the voice. Naomi didn't smile. You didn't hit it, she said quietly. The crowd shifted. You don't understand how this works, Blake snapped, the edge now impossible to hide. I understand frequencies, Naomi said. That note on your album is C6. What you just sang wasn't. Blake stepped closer, lowering his voice again. You need to stop talking. Why? She asked. Because for the first time that night, she wasn't afraid. A voice came from the wings. She's right. The sound engineer stepped forward, pale but resolute. I've been running the board for 5 years. He's never sung that note live. The truth detonated. What followed came fast. Too fast for Naomi to process. Applause, shouting. Blake storming off stage. Headlines forming in real time. By midnight, Naomi was alone backstage, sitting on a folding chair, phone buzzing nonstop. By morning, the tone had changed. Photos of her apartment circulated online. Commentators questioned her motives. Words like ungrateful, attention-seeking. These people filled her screen. By noon, Blake's lawyer arrived. Howard Stein smiled as he slid a document across the table. Sign this, he said. Say you misunderstood. There's a $50,000 scholarship in it for you. Naomi stared at the paper. Then she pushed it back. I didn't lie, she said. And I won't say I did just because he's rich. Howard's smile vanished. Then this will get ugly. Naomi watched him leave. Her hands were shaking. But something deeper than fear was taking root. The truth had already escaped. And once it does, it never comes back quietly. The question now wasn't whether Naomi Brooks could sing. It was whether the world was ready to hear her. Now, before next part begins, here's something I want you to think about. If you were in that room, watching a powerful man humiliate a young black girl on a global stage, would you have spoken up, yes or no? Because stories like Naomi's don't just ask who's right, they ask who's brave enough to answer when silence feels safer. By sunrise, Naomi Brooks was no longer just a girl who sang. She was a problem. That was the word floating through comment sections, newsrooms, and conference calls Naomi would never hear but would feel in every corner of her life. A problem that needed to be contained, reframed, buried under doubt. Her phone vibrated nonstop on the kitchen table of their small South Fulton apartment. Naomi didn't touch it. She watched the screen light up again and again, each notification a tiny explosion she didn't know how to diffuse. Angela Brooks stood by the sink, still in her scrubs from Grady Memorial Hospital. She hadn't slept. Her eyes were red, her jaw tight in that way Naomi recognized. The look her mother wore when the world demanded strength without permission. Baby, Angela said softly, don't read the comments. Naomi already had. They came fast and vicious. She knew what she was doing. Another black girl looking for attention. He gave her a chance and she attacked him. This is why you don't give these people a microphone. These people. The phrase burned more than the slurs, because it pretended to be reasonable, polite, objective. By mid-morning, cable news had picked up the story, not the truth, the version that made viewers comfortable. Split screens, smiling anchors. Phrases like controversy, misunderstanding, teenage accusation. Naomi watched a clip where Blake Harrington's publicist described the incident as a young fan misinterpreting professional production techniques. No mention of how he had dragged her on stage. No mention of the whispered threat. No mention of the engineer who confirmed the lie. Just a narrative slowly taking shape, one that made Naomi reckless and Blake misunderstood. By noon, the knock came. Angela opened the door cautiously. A man in a tailored suit stood there, his smile polished, his eyes cold. "Angela Brooks?" he asked. "Howard Stein. I represent Blake Harrington." Naomi felt the room shrink. Howard didn't sit until he was invited, and even then he chose the chair closest to the door. "I'll be brief," he said, sliding a folder onto the table. "Last night caused significant damage to my client's reputation." "He damaged it himself," Angela said sharply. Howard smiled. "That's one interpretation." He opened the folder. Inside was a statement, already written, already clean. It said Naomi had been confused, overwhelmed, that she regretted making false claims, that she apologized. Beneath it, a number, $50,000. "A scholarship," Howard said. "Music education, no legal action, no media pressure, a clean reset." Naomi stared at the paper. $50,000 was more than Angela made in 2 years. It was college, safety, breathing room. "And if we don't sign?" Angela asked. Howard's smile didn't fade. "Then we proceed." "With what?" Naomi asked. "Defamation," he said calmly. "Against Naomi, against the school, against anyone who repeats the accusation." "She told the truth," Angela said. Howard leaned back. "Truth is expensive." He stood, straightening his jacket. "I'd advise you to think carefully. The internet is not kind to girls like Naomi, especially when powerful men feel attacked." Girls like Naomi. After he left, the apartment felt too quiet. "I won't sign it," Naomi said. Angela closed her eyes. "I know," she said, "but that means we fight." By evening, the consequences arrived. Photos of their building appeared online. Someone posted Angela's work schedule. A commentator joked about welfare talent. Naomi's school called an emergency meeting. Ms. Lorraine Carter sat beside Naomi in the principal's office, her posture rigid. "The board is concerned," the principal said, avoiding eye contact. "There are protests, threats. We're considering a temporary suspension." "For telling the truth?" Naomi asked. "For the disruption," he replied. Outside, a small crowd had gathered. Some held signs, others just phones. "Liar. Go back to the choir. Apologize." That night, Naomi lay awake listening to her brothers breathe in the dark. Fear crept in, heavy and relentless. What if she had ruined everything? At 7:12 a.m., her phone buzzed again. This time it was different. A video. A woman sat in a recording studio, gold records lining the wall behind her. Her voice was steady, her eyes tired. "My name is Ariel Knox," she said, "and I'm the voice Blake Harrington has been selling for 15 years. Angela dropped into a chair. Naomi felt the room tilt. Ariel held up contracts, emails, audio files, proof. "I stayed quiet because that's what this industry expects from women who look like me," Ariel said. "But watching a black teenager get attacked for telling the truth, I couldn't do it anymore." The video spread like wildfire. Then another appeared, and another. Producers, engineers, session singers. The truth multiplied. By noon, the narrative cracked. By afternoon, Blake's team filed a lawsuit anyway. $10 million. Not to win, but to scare. Angela stared at the legal papers in disbelief. "We don't have money for a lawyer." A knock sounded. This time, a woman stood at the door. Mid-40s, confident, no smile. "My name is Evelyn Moore," she said. "I'm an attorney, and I represent Naomi Brooks, pro bono." Everything moved fast after that. Evelyn built the case like a fortress. Fraud, false advertising, consumer deception, a class action. Blake's smile disappeared from television. The courtroom was smaller than Naomi expected. Wood-paneled, too quiet. Blake sat across from her, surrounded by lawyers. Judge Eleanor Whitman listened patiently. "Mr. Harrington," she said finally, "can you sing the note in question right now?" The room held its breath. Blake opened his mouth. Nothing came out. The judge nodded once. "Motion denied." The gavel fell. Outside, cameras flashed. Reporters shouted questions. Naomi stood still, heart racing. She wasn't triumphant. She was exhausted. But she was standing, and for the first time since that night on stage, she felt something close to peace, because the lie had collapsed under its own weight. and the world was finally listening. The morning after the court ruling, Naomi Brooks woke up to sunlight instead of dread. For weeks, fear had been the first thing she felt when her eyes opened. Fear of headlines, fear of strangers, fear of what another notification might take from her family. That morning, the fear was still there, but it no longer owned the room. Angela Brooks sat at the kitchen table, coffee untouched, watching the news without sound. On the screen, Blake Harrington's name scrolled beneath the word career in freefall. Naomi didn't celebrate. She couldn't. What she felt instead was a quiet, complicated relief, the kind that comes when the storm finally moves on, leaving you to count what survived. The lawsuits unraveled quickly after that. Sponsors pulled out. The charity foundation quietly shut its doors. Former collaborators released statements distancing themselves, using words like unaware and misled, as if silence had never been a choice. Naomi returned to Oak Ridge Public School a week later. There were no cameras this time, just whispers in the hallway, cautious smiles, and one moment she would never forget: a freshman girl stopping her near the lockers. "I didn't think girls like us were allowed to say no," the girl said. "Until you did." Naomi hugged her before either of them could think twice. Ms. Lorraine Carter's choir room filled again, not with fear, but with music. Donations poured in, not from corporations, but from parents, teachers, musicians, people who had watched the story unfold and felt something shift inside them. Instruments arrived. Scholarships were created. The school board declined every dollar tied to Blake Harrington's name. "We don't want money that costs a child her dignity," the principal said at a press conference. The comment sections changed too, slowly, unevenly, but enough. Ariel Knox released her first album under her own name 6 months later. At the release show, she invited Naomi on stage, not to sing, but to stand beside her. "This is the voice that reminded me mine mattered," Ariel told the crowd. Naomi didn't chase record deals. She finished high school. She worked with Evelyn Moore to launch a small nonprofit that offered free vocal training and legal workshops for young artists, especially kids of color who'd never been taught how easily talent could be stolen. They called it Unfiltered Voices. The first workshop filled up in under an hour. Blake Harrington faded quietly from the spotlight. No comeback tour, no redemption arc, just a footnote. Another reminder of what happens when power assumes silence. 1 year later, Naomi stood on a simple stage at a community arts festival. No streaming deal, no backing track, just a piano and a microphone. She sang softly at first, then stronger, not to prove anything, not to challenge anyone. She sang because the truth had finally made room for her to breathe. In the crowd, Angela wiped tears from her face. Ms. Carter clutched her program. Ariel smiled, and scattered among them were strangers, black, white, brown, people who had come not for spectacle, but for honesty. When Naomi finished, the applause wasn't thunderous. It was steady, earned. Afterward, a reporter asked her the question she'd heard 100 times before. "Do you think speaking up was worth everything it cost you?" Naomi paused. "I lost comfort," she said. "I lost privacy. I lost the illusion that the system was built to protect people like me." She smiled gently. "But I kept my voice. And once you keep that, they can't really take anything else." The reporter nodded. The crowd dispersed. Life went on. Naomi still took the bus, still argued with her brothers over cereal, still practiced scales late at night, not because anyone was watching, but because singing had always been how she made sense of the world. And somewhere, a teenager who had been told to stay quiet watched her story and decided not to. That was the real ending, not the courtroom, not the headlines, not the downfall of a famous man, but the moment someone realized their truth was worth the risk. Before you leave, take a moment with this story. How did it make you feel? Did it change the way you see power, silence, or courage? If this story moved you, comment 111 below, so we know you stayed until the end. Where are you watching from today? Tell us your country. We'd love to know how far Naomi's voice traveled. And if you believe stories like this matter, please share this video, because someone out there still thinks they're alone, and they need to hear this.